like Norm.
Good evening and welcome to the Northern Kentucky History Hour. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Northern Kentucky History Hour. We're going to spend just a minute for those of you on Zoom, letting everyone into the meeting here, and then we will get started. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. All right. We are also live on Facebook, so welcome everyone who's joining us via Facebook, either live or recorded. You can watch all the past episodes of Northern Kentucky History Hour on Behringer-Crawford's Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. Okay, if you have any friends that are wanting to watch this episode who do not get into the meeting, because we do have a maximum of 100, you can direct them to the Facebook page. We're streaming live on Behringer-Crawford's page and also on the City of Bellevue's page. So thanks so much to the city for their partnership tonight. We appreciate it. All right, just one more minute as we let everyone in. Great crowd tonight on this snowy evening. Okay, well, again, welcome to Northern Kentucky History Hour. My name is Tara Johnson-Noem, and I am one of the trustees of Behringer-Crawford Museum. I'm actually the vice president of the board, and I am very privileged to be your host tonight and always, actually, for Northern Kentucky History Hour. I want to say a quick thank you to, let's see here, quick thank you to my fellow board members, who I see on the meeting tonight, and thank you also to the staff members of Behringer-Crawford Museum who make this possible by promoting the event and helping us with a lot of things that make it go well and seamlessly every single week. This is episode 35. Also want to take just a minute to thank the supporters of the museum. Behringer-Crawford Museum is supported financially by the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, Arts Wave, the Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, and the Carol Ann and Ralph B. Hale Jr. U.S. Bank Foundation. So thanks to all of those organizations. And thank you so much to our members. I know many of you have become members in the past year, and we are so grateful for your support. If you are not a member yet, and you enjoy programming like this, we hope you'll consider going to bcmuseum.org to find out how to join. And you can also find out more about some of our in-person and virtual programming at the museum's website, bcmuseum.org, on Facebook at Behringer-Crawford Museum. Okay, so a few details about tonight. I see a lot of new names, so welcome to our new guests. We are hoping to make this as interactive as we can, knowing that we're all here on Zoom and not able to be together. So you will find your microphone has been muted. If you want to turn off your video, just keep in mind, even if you can't see us, we can see you when the screen is being shared, so you may want to turn your video off. It's up to you, but we definitely want you to participate by entering any comments or questions that you have into the chat. So please do that, and we will take I'll take all of the questions, and then I'll ask them to our guests at the end. We also will have a quiz question during the presentation, kind of early on. And so if you are the first correct respondent to the quiz question, you receive bragging rights and also one of these cool Northern Kentucky History Hour pins. So get your fingers ready to type when the question comes. I think, like they said, sort of early in the presentation this week. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to tonight's guests. They are a duo, Jim and Bev McPhail. They relocated from Connecticut to Bellevue in 2017. They bought an old house in the Fairfield Avenue Historic District and set about getting involved in the community and researching their home's history. As they did, they also uncovered many misconceptions and urban legends about the city's past, which they will be sharing and debunking a bit tonight, along with some other very, very cool stories that they have planned for you all. So I can't wait to introduce you to the McPhails. Jim, Bev, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. There is a third member of our little team here. Her name is Marcy Ackerson. Me, hello.
Welcome, Marcy. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, I think we're all set if you guys want to get started.
Okay, so
That looks perfect.
Excellent.
so we want to thank everybody for joining us. We recognize a lot of friends out there, which makes us feel a little better. So our presentation tonight is just going to take a few of the things we've learned that we think are really interesting and exciting about Bellevue and share them with you. And it's what helped us catch this bug, right? We started pulling this thread and it got bigger and bigger.
And we'll also clear up a few urban myths, legends, misconceptions out there about our beginning history of Bellevue. Okay.
Not that button. Oh, I click it? Sorry. I'm doing that in front of everybody. So we're going to start with the story. We call it All Started at Pump One. And this is a map we found at the Campbell County Historical and Genealogical Society. And it shows some early surveys for warrants, land grants in Kentucky. And you can see James Taylor at the top. In this story, there are 3 James Taylors they were concerned with. There was a family they had lots of kids, but one of them was always named James. The one we're primarily interested in is James Taylor V. His father, James Taylor IV, whose land this was originally, never left Virginia, never came here. He sent his son instead, who was in his early 20s at the time. And then James Taylor V, and we have a little shorthand we use. We call him JT4, 5, and 6, just because we're lazy. It's a Navy thing. Everybody gets a nickname. So JT4 comes, makes a couple of trips, and then settles here.
5.
I'm sorry, 5. Thank you. So the system, I guess, doesn't work. JT6 is his son, and he's the one who inherits part of his JT5's land. The other name you might be interested in knowing is David Leach at the bottom of the screen, who has like a whole lot of land, 15,000 acres. He made a lot of money in Virginia as a merchant. Did not take part in our war. He went back to Scotland, wrote it out, came back, still had his money, bought up people's warrants, because not everybody that got a warrant for fighting in the war wanted to go to Kentucky. So they instead turned it into cash. And so David Leach is sitting on a lot of land. He marries a lady named Keturah Moss, who came out with her family from Virginia when she was 14. That's important because David Leach dies and James Taylor V ends up marrying Keturah Moss. And it's their 3 daughters that reach adulthood that are the namesakes of the Taylor's Daughters Historic District, for instance. So James Taylor shows up, JT5, and this is part of his narrative. Bev found this transcript in the Campbell County Public Library, which is a great place if you guys aren't familiar with it. The folks on the second floor are first rate. And he mentions the 2,500 acres. His math isn't so good because he says he gets a third of it, which is 1,500 acres. I think he cheated his father here. I could be wrong. 1,000 of the 2,500 acres are going to a man named George Muse, who was a major in the French and Indian War. And I think it's pretty cool. This isn't germane to our story, but when we won the Revolutionary War, people who still held patents or warrants from the French and Indian Wars, which were given by the Crown, our new government said they would honor them. I thought that was a pretty stand-up thing to do. So, so Colonel Muse gets that land. He ends up dying, and his daughters sell it to a man named Washington Berry, and he founds Dayton. But I'll let somebody from Dayton tell that story. Later on in his narrative, he says here, he says, you know, I've already talked about my father's 2,500 acres. That the important part here is that all of it was purchased. So none of the land that we sit on was awarded to any James Taylor for any service. James Taylor the fourth obviously bought up people's warrants back in Virginia, and this land formed part of that. And so that's one of the urban legends we like to put to rest. If you can't trust him in his autobiography, then we tried, honestly, we tried reading the 2-volume land grant books. It's slogging. This is an original copy of JT5's will. So you fast forward about 50 years from him coming, and he writes his will, 1844, and amends it in 1848, just before his death. This is in the archives at Northern Kentucky University. Those people there are great too. But one thing they won't do is let you take a pen or pencil into their room. So I took pictures, but even with them, it was slogging. Luckily, Eagle-Eye Bev finds a transcript. Section 7 is what we care about. He says he gives his 3 daughters, and he names them by name. The residual of whatever his land was for his home estate, they call it the home tract or the Bellevue tract, after he gives his son 800 acres. The residual was a little more than 800 acres, and the girls are gonna, women by this point, are gonna divide it equally. Fast forward again, another about 15 years. This is a US Army map done to help locate where they want to put artillery emplacements around the Cincinnati area should the Confederate Army make it this far, which they didn't really. But it's a great map, very accurate, but you can see nothing has happened between Newport and Jamestown, which is the start of Dayton. In those intervening years, nobody sold any land. And the part that we care about is 3 river lots. They're called river lot number 1, 2, and 3. And they were given to Anne, Jane, and Keturah in that order. More importantly, in just a few years from this map being made, a man named Albert S. Berry from Newport is going to buy a part of river lot number 1, and he's going to found, as it were, Bellevue. And he founds it in that shaded area right there. It's the northern part of river lot 1.
It's called the original plat.
Yep, and that is called the original plat or the original plan of Bellevue. Everything else in Bellevue is an addition, but we'll talk about that too. This is from the Cincinnati Enquirer on the 2nd day of May, and it talks about a general exodus from Cincinnati, people looking for cheaper rent and ostensibly cheaper land. And they specifically say that they're going over the river. See the cat. So that's May 1866, the very beginning. Now later that month, this appears, and this is that Albert Berry has started a town. He's going to call it Bellevue in honor of the old Taylor estate of which it formed a part. And this Taylor estate is the one in Newport, not anything to do with Virginia. That's the other urban legend we'd like to put to rest. They predict we're going to be successful, and we think Bellevue has turned out just fine.
One of the other urban legends is that the heirs could not sell any land until the mother, Keturah Taylor, passed away. And going through JT5's will, he does call out certain sections of his estate that can't be sold until after she passes, but there was nothing else that says that they couldn't sell anything else. Now, JT5's estate covered the tri-state area. When he died, it was valued at $4 million, which today is about $132 million. So this guy was no slouch. He knew what he was doing.
But I will say that Keturah Harris Leach, when her husband died, brought a whole lot of that initial land with her. And so.
Yeah, 15,000 acres.
So we don't have the, we don't have a record of what happened at the auction, but we can tell what lots were sold by looking at the deed index books that are at the Campbell County Courthouse. And the first lot, and we don't know actually which one was sold first. So when we try to figure out the first lot sold, we're just going to go by the first guy that made it to the courthouse and had it put in a book. And that guy was one Christopher Laudenberger. Actually, his name in most places is Christian, and you'll hear me call him Christian. And he's kind of a early Bellevue crush for me. He bought lot 14 of the original plat. This is the original plat of Bellevue. This was what Albert S. Berry had laid out by surveyors. Albert S. Berry named the streets. He named the street on the left Taylor Street. That was renamed Patchen when Taylor Avenue became a thing, but at this point, Taylor Avenue doesn't exist. And the middle street is Howlam, Rinsford Avenue in the middle, and you'll see that Lafayette on the edge is not named. It gets named later. And here's Fairfield Avenue, and that leads us to the quiz. What was the original name of Fairfield Avenue before Bellevue came into existence? And as we said, Christian Laudenberger bought lot 14, and that can be found right there, corner of Howlam and Fairfield. This is,
Can we do this?
Yeah.
This is what that original plat looks like today. There's nothing left of any of those buildings that are there. There is a little bit, if you look at towards the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little bit of a street. That's what's left of Rensford.
and just south of that, you can see a little dirt patch. When we moved here in 2017, there was a cute little cottage there, and it was the last remaining structure on the original plat, and somehow between then and now, and not too long after we came, it was allowed to be torn down, and well, that's that.
Okay. So the building with the white roof, that's where St. Elizabeth's and some Planet Fitness or something is in that one. Just to give you an idea of where we are.
And you can see the Harbor Green Towers from the top anyway. This is what the original plat looked like in 1883. We use this map a lot when we do our research, and we're going to talk about that in a subsequent slide too. And by 1883, the original plat had filled in pretty well. And you can see by now, Patchen Avenue is Patchen Avenue. And there is Christian Laudenberger's house. You guys sense we're leading to something, huh? You superimpose that same map, the same current map, and you can still see Christian Laudenberger's house. It is underneath what is now the UDF. Specifically, it's underneath the gas pumps. Even more specifically, it's underneath gas pump number 1. And that's why when we talk about Bellevue, we say it all started at pump number 1. So this is a major part, most of that 1883 map. It's found in a book that you guys can get, anybody can get from the Kentucky Digital Library through the University of Kentucky. It's a free download, and it's an amazing book. It It's a survey. They did surveys of 3 counties, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell. And we never guarantee that it's 100% correct. Well, we give seminars on how to research your house, but we can tell you the only mistakes we found is that there is no way this house right here could have existed. And that's because, as you may have noticed, Bellevue stops right here at Washington Avenue. And when I first saw this map, I didn't know anything about anything, really. And I thought this was just part 1, and I was going to flip the page and see the rest of the map. But no, when I flip the page, or several pages, I see this map of Campbell County. And it's got that same little void that is completely populationless, except again, these 2 dots here could not have been there. Didn't know at first why that was, because I live in that void. And I'm like, how come we didn't belong to anything then? And it turns out that that void corresponds to river lot number 3, which was given to Keturah Harris. And her heirs have not put it up for sale yet. And so that's why there could not be any houses there, because they haven't sold a single lot. If there's anybody there, really, they're squatters. And so that's that. You'll notice that these are different colors, and each of those is a different addition to Bellevue. So we learned a lot as we go through this, and the way I get towns grow is you have an original section and then people have an addition to it. And the green up here in the upper left is the only addition that JT6 gave to Bellevue. This is all his land here, and it later joins Bellevue, but he didn't do it. He sold it to other people, and they did something with it and sold it to Bellevue, which notably the Charles Spinks family, same people that brought us Bonnie Leslie. So early in the, we were part of the Bellevue Sesquicentennial, and I'm going to say 150th because it comes off the tongue a little better. And we were tasked with trying to find the oldest house in Bellevue. And we quickly found out that it was impossible, because when Bellevue was building its first buildings, there was no civic entity for which they would apply to a permit. So there's no record, excuse me, of any order buildings were built. So we decided instead to try to identify Bellevue originals. And we made a trip down to Frankfurt, to the state archives, and we found our tax rolls. And specifically, we found the tax rolls for 1870. That's our first year in existence. And this is a little snippet from the first page of the 1870 tax rolls. And it's got everybody who owns a lot, what lots they own, what addition they're in. And the code is TA is Timberlake's, BA is Barry's addition, Williamson's addition, the value. And the key here is it's the value of the improvement. We surmised or figured if it had an improvement, that improvement had to at least include a house. Nobody was putting a garage or a storage unit in Bellevue at that time. So this was how we decided to determine the Bellevue originals. Some of these buildings, 2 of these buildings, turned out they were stores. And at that time, a store usually had the owner's living quarters above it. And we see that all around town now, that the commercial buildings go up. But it wasn't so easy reading the tax rolls, because a lot of names were spelled phonetically or just plain misspelled. And so we used the first Bellevue census, which we were lucky enough that we had a census right after we were incorporated, just a few months later, less than 2. And this was really good, except this census didn't have any addresses, so it didn't give us any hint as to what the location is, but at least it gave us accurate spellings. We also had the 1872, 2 years later, the first Williams directory that has Bellevue in it. And again, spellings are pretty random. But this had addresses, and this helped us see if it made sense. Is this lot that they're talking about, is it on Fairfield? And that's the extent of addresses at this time. Bellevue didn't start putting numbers on until the late 1800s and didn't do it reliably until the the late 1880s, and didn't start doing it reliably until the early 1890s. And then to confuse people researching, they changed their numbering system in 2002. So if you're researching your, sorry, 1902, a little nervous still, and I get on a roll. And so anyway, we end up with the Bellevue originals. And whoops, let's go back. I had a bigger legend there. The red is, it might exist today. We don't know. We walk around town, you know, when it's nice, not today, certainly, but usually when it's nice. And we make a point to every now and then go down Berry or Cinder and look at some of these houses that might potentially, we don't approach them. We certainly don't go in the yard because we live in Kentucky and we know everybody's armed. We're not going to get shot for this, right?
And a lot of times, if the house has been, additions have been put on, if there's siding on it, sometimes they cover up under the eaves so you can't see any of the original work up there. Sometimes if it's so unrecognizable, it could be the original under there, but we don't know. So we're just going to say it's not. It's not.
And we don't know what we're going to do with this yet. Like during the Sesquicentennial, we were going to maybe give certificates or maybe a little plaque or something. We'll probably approach the city and see what the city want to do. Specifically, I think the Preservation Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, has the legal right and the sole legal right, in my understanding, to award things like plaques and stuff. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. So this is our, and then as we were talking about that, we thought, wouldn't it be neat to use this same tool, the directories and the tax rolls, to kind of chart how Bellevue grew. And so this is the starting point, 1870. One of our keys is, because we think it's important to urban planning, is we are locating where retail stores are, the ones that would bring people to a neighborhood. So grocery stores, daily markets, and the difference between a grocery store at this time and a daily market is a daily market dealt in goods that, had a short shelf life: milk, meat, vegetables, and grocers dealt with flour and other staples, canned goods, and things like that. They would deal with some daily stuff, but it certainly wasn't their specialty. And that comes into play here in just a few years. So in 1870, this is it. This is the status of structures in Bellevue. 1871, and new structures are indicated in red, so you can see how the town was added to. And I'm sorry, I made cue cards and I violated it. You can see both in 1871 and 1870 was like that. We have two major population centers here. We have one in the original plat, and we have one along Berry and along Center, a little more spread out. But right here about the intersection of Berry and Center. And in 1871, we added 13 structures, and they kept to about that same pattern. They were added either to the original plat or basically around Berry and Center. Now we go to 1872, and you can see we added 42 structures in 1872. We only had 70 when we started, so this is a big jump. Now a lot of them were built by one of two Williamson brothers, because they own a lot of that land and they're trying to bring people to Bellevue. But another reason why they're there and why the Williamsons are so optimistic is there's a streetcar now that runs along Fairfield Avenue. It goes between Newport and Dayton. And interesting enough, that streetcar morphs into, is eventually called number 12, and it has morphed into the bus number 12 that runs along Fairfield Avenue. And in 1872, we've added another store. We've added a store at the corner of Lafayette and Center. Now we go on to 1873. Another explosion. This added 28 new structures, including the big red one right there is our very first school. Before this, we were sending kids to Newport and being charged. And so they started a school fund. We built a school. It cost $7,700. Built by a man named Schneider, in a contractor from Newport. And I don't know if she knew that school was coming, but that store that's across the street was owned by a lady named Rosina Uberschlag. And part of, she owned a grocery store, sure, but she also was listed as being a confectioner. And I think putting a confectionery across the street from the grade school is brilliant. 1874, which is the last year we've done up until now. We're going to keep going. We have 34 new. We have 3 new grocery stores. We have 2 across the street from each other, across at the corners of Berry and Center. We have 1 that's in this new rapidly growing area below Fairfield in the Williamson district. And again, this is keeping about the same pattern as happened in 1872 and then through 1873. It's just a widespread now. And with more stores, people will be probably confident building just about anywhere in what exists of Bellevue right then. But you will notice every one of these stores is a grocery store. Fresh foods were kind of tough to come by. So Bellevue depended really heavily on what were called hucksters. And huckster at that time did not have the negative connotation that it has now. Huckster was anybody that sold without a building, sold on the street. They could have a cart, a kiosk. They could carry a big bag on their shoulders and go door to door. But that's what a huckster was. A peddler is synonymous with huckster. And why this is important is in 1877, the town council wants to impose a very heavy tax on hucksters. And the citizens don't like it. And they know about it. It's gone through 2 readings. It's about to go through the 3rd reading and be voted on. And they draft this letter, this most respectfully worded petition that says greenstuffs, vegetables, and berries will be almost impossible to get from our resident grocers. They go on to say that this ordinance will drive hucksters away, and they strenuously object to it. They think that it will keep them from coming in town, and they try to remind the city fathers, the town council, that they won't get any revenue things, they won't buy any license, and the people won't get the benefit. It was signed by 108 of our citizens. And we've looked at these really carefully. We don't see any X's, and this is almost unique, because we see a lot of old documents up at the city building. And usually if we have this many, we have 1 or 2, maybe 3 with an X, and then somebody prints the name and says that's his mark. But these all seem to be able to write their name, unless they had somebody write for them. But if they're signed in it, they would want to leave their mark. This is from the Cincinnati Daily Star, which didn't last very long, but it was in the 1870s. And we love reading it. We love when articles of Bellevue come up, because it's very tabloid-esque. You can see they call the town council the city dads. Mm-hmm. The correspondent goes on to say that he thinks a couple of them are working in the interest of the people, but most of them are not. They're thinking about their pockets. And he obviously has little love for grocers, who he says would charge 2 prices if they got the chance. So this is the notice of the council meeting. And again, the correspondent says that they're probably going to pass it. and it's probably going to keep hucksters from coming in. And he surmises that maybe some of the city councilmen have been bribed. This is in the same issue. This is I'm sorry, this is not. It gets passed. I got ahead of myself. I don't know what I wrote all those index cards for. I'm not even reading. So they want to have a citizens indignation meeting, and I think we probably need more of those. And they want either repeal or resign. Repeal it, or we want you to go. You did it in defiance of us, and the correspondent thinks you can see this is a step in the right direction. This is in the same issue, and it's an open letter to the taxpayers. It's signed by a taxpayer. And he just says, look, they ignored 108 of us, treated us with contempt. Let's get up in our might, and let's get those guys. We also found this in the clerk's office. This is the letter that they drafted. 3 resolutions. I'll cut to the chase. The first resolution is it's unanimous opinion of everybody that ordinance is oppressive. And resolution number 2, you guys ought to get rid of it. And resolution number 3, next time we write you guys a letter telling you we don't like something, you better pay attention to it. I'm going to move on now. It got repealed. As he puts it, dead as a doornail. He goes on to say that some of the city councilmen that had pushed it through did not seem comfortable doing it, but they did it. And Mr. Patchen, by not coincidence, that's who Patchen Avenue is named for. He had tears rolling down his cheeks. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. So on to the next one.
And when we first moved here, we didn't know anything about researching the house or anything. So Jim Googled our address one night, and what popped up was this little blurb out of a like a fraternity paper talking about Chester W. Dorsey, who is practicing dentistry at 515 Fairfield, which is our house, and he was in our parlor.
And yeah, it's called the Freighter, and it's the newsletter of the dental fraternity. Omicron is the Louisville Dental School. It wasn't called that then. Oh, it was called Louisville Dental School. Now it's University of Louisville School of Dentistry. So I kept, there's several editions of that. This is the 1904 edition. And so we knew that at least in 1904, there's a dentist yanking teeth in our parlor. And so I'm reading through, and I get to 1908, and I see he's moved. And I'm a little downfallen, right? Because we were important for a while there. We had a dentist in our front room. We didn't know Bellevue at all. And so we didn't know what 340 Bellevue was, where it was. And so we go to Google Maps, we punch it in, and that's what we see. And we're both like, hey, that's our dentist. And we have a saying, we don't believe in coincidences. So we start digging, we go through city directories, and we actually talked to Dr. Wall, and it turns out there's been a dentist practicing in that building since 1908. And we've only had 4. I think that's even the more remarkable, is how long they stayed. And you guys may recognize the last name and the people associated with Behringer-Crawford. And then Bev's got another story.
Oh, about that. You gotta click.
Nope, I'm gonna click after you say it.
Okay, so whenever there's a heavy rain here, things float up in our yard, and we have to go and kind of police it because we don't want our dogs choking on anything. So we've got this jar in the house that we call things we found in the yard.
I don't know if you can see it. It's got nails, pieces of horseshoe, a toy truck.
Yeah, and also I didn't get out there quick enough, and one of our dogs found a human molar that they were chewing on. And we kept that. It's in the jar, and there it is on a Sanborn map. And that corner of at Fairfield there, that's the dentist's office, and this is from 1910.
It's a 1910 Sanborn map, and it shows the dentist's office. And yeah, been there ever since. So I guess, and this was Chester, I'm sure. I call him Chet. I guess he just yanked and pitched him out the window.
He goes on to become mayor of Bellevue at one point.
Yep, in the early 20s. So we've come across a lot of applications, and these are applications for building permits. And they're gold because it can be tough to figure out exactly when your house was built, and these give you a pretty good clue. We see this for removing house, and we're thinking that we required one if you're going to tear one down, I guess so. And then we notice kind of the fine print. It says from lake to division. It turns out I didn't realize that remove used to have the meaning of move. So this is George W. Robson of Robson Row fame, and the two Robsons, wants to move his house from Lake Street to lot 22 of Timberlake's edition on Division Street. We set out to see if we could figure out what house that was and if it still exists. So we started in our big starting place, which is the Sanborn Map. This is the 1886 Sanborn Map. And we were hoping to find just one house on Lake. And then we look in 2000 and the next one, 1894, and it would be gone. But there were a lot of houses on Lake, including this one. And then, so now we're going to look at the 1894 and see which one ain't there anymore. And as you can see, this house, you can see Robson's Row on the left side of, I'm on the right side of both of these maps. But on the right map, the long house is no longer there, and this fabulous house with this porch is the current occupant of the spot. But neither one of these maps showed us where it moved to. So we had to go to the last Sanborn map that applies to Bellevue, and we see this in lot 22 on Division Street. What did I say?
You didn't.
Oh, yeah, this is the 1910 map. I'm sorry. So in 1910, this house is on lot 22 of Division. And it's pretty apparent that this is the same house as the one that was sitting on Lake. And in case you're wondering what it looks like this. Now, there are lots of pictures of this house, but we like this one from Google Maps because of the guy that saw the Google card going by and decided to strike a pose.
And you can see the footprint. It's got the little bump out on the side, and it's the same one. And also, it's a very long house. It's 75
feet
long, and probably one of the longest ones in the town. And
so you can imagine what it must have taken to move it. Even the block that it took to get there. The south side of Lake Street is pretty populated by now, so they probably had to stick to roads. It's fairly flat, but all they have is horsepower. They have manual jacks and a 75-foot house. And so you might be wondering, was it worth it? This is the house that George Robson built. And it was designed by the noted Cincinnati architect Desjardins, and we think it's a pretty fabulous house. And I got this picture from a website called Gables to Gardens, Gardens to Gables, something, one of the two, I'm sorry. It's a really good website. I have it bookmarked, that's why I don't remember. It's about historic homes in our area. I took my own picture, but when I got home and looked at it, they had their trash can on the curb, and I thought it looked better without the trash can.
We do.
714. One of Bellevue's, oops,
I did that.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
One of Bellevue's noted early residents was Anna Wolfram. She's on our first census, and she's noted 10 years old, but turns out she's actually 13. She's born in Canada. Turns out that is everywhere. That was going to be our question: is where was Anna Wolfram born? But we were told it couldn't be something that would be easy to Google. I Googled it, and there's like 10 sites that tell you, and so we went a different direction. She's born in 1857. When she graduates from Cincinnati Medical College, she's 38 years old, but she spends the remaining 35 years of her life as a women's and children's doctor in Bellevue. And she birthed the vast majority of babies that were born in Dayton and Bellevue. And she was the only female doctor, the first and then the only for a long time female doctor.
She specialized in diseases of women and children.
She's in lots of articles, doing her medical feats. I chose this one because it's got it's a cautionary tale of not getting drunk and falling asleep in a farmer's field, or else you may wake up with ruffians beating you up. The other aside for this is that this is the same field where Pearl Bryant's body was found. It's on Locke's farm in Fort Thomas. Just like she's in on a lot of births, Anna Wolfram's also in on a lot of deaths. And this is a young man who died of meningitis. He's 5 years old. We see a lot of death certificates. The span is about 1890s to 19 teens. Interesting thing about this is this young man died at home. And he died, and his address was 322 Center Street. And although he is not related to Anna Wolfram, that's the same house that Anna Wolfram dies in 27 years later. And there's just a little synchronicity to that, if you ask me.
She worked up until just a few weeks before she was stricken with some illness and
Right.
passed away. She was 73.
Yes. And that's the house, 322 Center. It's a darling little, probably 1 to 2 story, 1.5, 2 story Northern Kentucky townhouse with a really fabulous mansard roof. Do we have time for one more? Because this is our favorite, one of our favorites.
Yes.
Okay, so sometimes you learn something new, even if you didn't want to. People who are familiar with Bellevue recognize those two buildings. They were the one on the left is absolutely called the Herald Building. It's got his name at the top and the year it was built. But he also built the second one when he wanted to expand his store. Fascinating man. We wrote an article about him. I'm sure you guys all read it. If not, why not? When he got his law degree, he was a grocer. As he's working as a grocer, he's reading law, then goes to law school for 2 years, gets his law degree, sets up practice, and he sells his grocery store, which by now is in the building on the right, to F.W. Witt, and Witt stays there for years and years and years. But he sells the buildings independently. And as part of, we want to put a plaque on fabulous buildings along the avenue, we ran the deeds back and we get to where he splits these two because he owned both. He owned the whole lot. That's a whole lot's width in Williamson. So he splits it. And both of the deeds both of the buildings went to different guys, and both deeds say they get to share the vault. And man, we light up. We're like, vault. And so we're pretty friendly. People know that we water some plants on Fairfield, and so we know all the shop owners. So we go and talk to Matt and Betsy, the people that run Ampersand Home there on the right. We said, have you guys ever been to the basement? Thinking vaults are heavy, that's where they're going to be. And they say, yeah. And we said, is there a vault? Have you guys seen a big vault that you share with the other building? It's got to go through the wall, right? And they had never seen it. So we're like, okay, so maybe, right, a lot of time has passed, vault's been removed. But turns out vault has a different meaning. And what you're looking at are two ordinances. But I'll give you a little backstory. Bellevue got water service in 1887. They got sewer service in 1907. Not everybody wanted to connect to the sewer, so they kept using their outhouse, which in legal terms is called a vault. So the shared vault was the outhouses that were in back of those buildings. Imagine our disappointment. The one on the right says that you cannot, within the city limits of Bellevue, build another vault. If you have one and it's working, keep using it. If it stops working, you have to connect to the, yeah, I'm sorry, the one on the left, my bad. You have to connect to the sewer. The one on the, and that's 1915. By 1922, Bellevue said, we're tired of even messing with smelly outhouses. Get rid of your outhouse, get rid of it now. And you'll recognize the name of the mayor down there. It's Chester Dorsey, the first, well, not the first dentist in Bellevue, but the first one that was at Dr. Wall's practice. Yeah, so this one says get rid of it. And this is what got us thinking, because I never gave it what it took to get rid of your outhouse and fill in the vault underneath. You had to connect to the sewer. You had to get somebody to plumb it into your house. You had to pick a room. You build a room. It's probably why people didn't do it, but progress, the city moves on as it modernizes. We can't have smelly outhouses. We have a to-do list. These are things that we're working on. Real quick, we really want to research this Burns family. If you don't read anything else, read the very last sentence on this page, but you can read the rest if you want. So we think there's a story with this Burns family. And as soon as the courts open back up, we'll go to the criminal court part. And these are from 1871. And they lived, see, I can't seem to go back with this. Oh yeah, I can. They lived if you can see my cursor, they lived in this house right here on Berry, the very last of this long row of houses. It's an original Bellevue, but after 1872, it shouldn't be on this map. It disappears from the tax rolls. The lot is there, but there is no longer an improvement. We think the house was either torn down or burned down. We think there's a story there somewhere, so we're gonna dig it up. And so that's one of the things that's gonna be our pandemic go wild, is we're gonna spend days and days and days at the courthouse. But they like us there. The ladies that work there are really nice. Oh, so here we go. Now we welcome, is this where we give the answer?
This is where you give the answer.
Okay, the original name was the Jamestown Road. It was also called after that, after Dayton became Dayton, the Newport Dayton Pike.
Okay, so say those again for me. I think you might have stumped everybody.
Yeah, so, and we would have stumped ourselves, and it's not a trick question because it's absolutely real, but when we decided to ditch the Where Was Anna Wolfram Jim, we,
The deed book.
Yep.
There.
Right here, you can see that Albert Berry bought from Henry Clay Timberlake and others part of River Lot number 1 between Jamestown Road and the Ohio River.
Oh yeah. Okay, so here are the answers that were given.
Okay.
And I'm just going to kind of say these, and then we're going to kind of double check and make sure. So Horse Railroad was one. Katura was one. First Street was the other guess. Oh, no, Paul Weisenberger, Jamestown Road. There we go.
Yay!
Paul.
Respect.
I don't know if he's won our quiz yet, but he's a longtime viewer. So thanks, Paul. I'm going to write down your name and we will get you your very own pin. Hey, Paul, if you did not enter your mailing address when you registered, send me a private message in the chat and I will make sure to get you your pin. So guys, this has been awesome. We don't have a ton of time left, but I do have a couple questions. So I'm sorry if anybody doesn't get their question answered, but we're gonna go, oh, Paul, he did get a pin. That's okay, Paul. Oh, everybody's watching out for Paul. Okay, good job. Thank you to everybody watching the chat. Okay, so here we are. First of all, we last week heard from someone who did a lot of research on locks and dams on the Ohio River. And they were talking about how, the depth of the river is significantly higher than it originally was year-round for navigation because of the locks and dams that were created. So one of the questions, and I didn't write down who asked this, but wouldn't the northernmost part of the original plat, is any of that was there now underwater? And I don't know if she was thinking about that. That's what
probably. Can I show you? Can I share something else?
Yeah, of course.
Besides this? So how do I do that?
So,
do I punch out of my intro? This is really embarrassing. I had 2 engineering degrees and Zoom stumps me.
Here,
where am I going?
looking to see.
I already have it open. So.
And then while you're looking for that, Craig with the observatory, he would like to get a copy of the map that's early in your presentation that included Mount Adams and the observatory. So maybe I can facilitate to make sure that you get that for them.
Okay. So did everybody catch our email address?
Do you want to put it in the chat again? Do you mind? Or you're kind of looking. Sorry, you're looking for something. Why don't you tell me and I'll write it down.
Okay, it's historic Bellevue KY at iCloud.com. Okay.
So I'm gonna put this in the chat, make sure I spelled it right. And then if anybody wants to get in touch with Jim and Bev, and Marcy, they can do that. And Blanche would like a copy too.
Okay, yes.
So let's see. Okay, I'm gonna keep, you're pulling something up. Show us what you got.
Yeah, and so if I'm picking up what you're laying down, maybe we're hoping that part of the original plat is underwater because it didn't get torn down. And one of the things about it is all this was muddy, and Rinsford Street was originally just supposed to be an alley. It was only 15 feet wide. You can see how narrow it is compared to all the other streets. And Albertus Berry, I'm sure, I'm trying to think for a guy that fought in the Civil Wars, it's been that long, that people would build here on the north side of these lots facing the river, but almost nobody did. I don't know which direction these ones that are at the back of the lot face, but all of these houses faced on Rinsford. And so they went ahead and turned Rinsford into a street, and I'm using air quotes. And so I'm not sure River Avenue was ever anything other than mud.
Yeah. And
What we call a paper alley, a paper street or a paper alley, if you've heard that phrase before. We do, and we've dug through a lot of city directories looking people up, but we've never seen an address on River Avenue.
Gotcha. So maybe it was more of a, like you said, a paper street, not really a street.
And so I don't think anything was ever built out here. So even though the river is wider, I don't think anything was there.
Gotcha. That's really cool.
You know how we can tell? Oh, I'm dumber than you. Hang on a sec. We can look at, just had that. Where was, back to Zoom. I apologize for fumbling.
You're
Um,
you're fine.
Share. We can go back to the superimposition, right?
Right, the today.
So this looks like the shoreline as we superimpose, and you can see it's still well,
So
even if we're not quite there, but we got it lined up. We've done this map overlays with a lot. You get a lot of good information that way. So, but that's a good thought. I wish I'd have thought of that, even though I don't think it'll help.
yeah, it sounds like maybe not so much, but definitely I would say there's probably less shoreline than there previously would have been. A couple people have commented about it in the chat. The original Bellevue Beach Park, Michelle says, is underwater.
Yes, that's what we're told.
Yeah, and then Gretchen says, yeah, definitely still in the floodplain. So anyway, but yeah, very, very cool, interesting conversation to imagine all the dynamics that the river's even different, right, than it originally was. We're a little bit over time, so I apologize for that, but I do have one other kind of set of questions that I want to get to from Frederick Warren, who's one of our regular guests, and he was just wondering about, did you look at all into any churches that were built, by the 1873 or 1875 date that you had kind of like looked up to in terms, because you looked at grocery stores and things like that. So he was just wondering if you looked at churches.
Yeah, so in the city directory, because that's what we based a lot of this on, the churches don't start to get mentioned until later. Because I wanted to point that out because it is part of the whole civic growth, right? The one thing we got is that by 1877, the Emmy Methodist Church on, and I always get this backwards, it's either Prospect or Poplar, that was built because there's a newspaper article about them. But unlike Sacred Heart, which we found records of the laying the cornerstone, we found the building permit for the new one, for the big one. But for the original, the one that is where the school, that was kind of turned into the school, that got started in 1870. Trying to think. I'm blanking. But we know exactly, I guess my point there was, we know exactly when that Sacred Heart got built. That was documented. They didn't document the Episcopal Church.
Gotcha. Well,
but I'll tell you, you mentioned churches, you know that most of every building except Sacred Heart before 1894 in Bellevue was built by a man named Moses Swim. Did I say that? Yeah. No. Every church that was built except for Sacred Heart, including the one that's near the town hall, that's now a private residence. His name is Moses Swim. He lived next to the Lutheran church, which he also built.
oh, wow.
That's his house, the house that's right next to that community center. It's an amazing man. His obituary is one of the best I've ever read. So look him up.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone is a fan of this work, obviously they can email you at the address that we posted. What's next for you guys? You said you're going to do a little bit more research, but are you going to be able, hopefully after the pandemic kind of subsides, to share all of this in the city?
Yeah, so we give seminars on how to research your house, and we're giving one coming up as part of Northern Kentucky Preservation Weekend.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of work to do because now we have to include Boone and Kenton counties, where anybody because they can come from all over. So we just hopefully we can figure out what's different. But we want to start giving history and hosting. So we don't necessarily have to be the ones to give the lectures, but we want to start giving things like this on Bellevue history on a regular basis, maybe monthly.
Awesome.
Yeah, we think so. And honestly, we hadn't even thought about doing Zoom, but I've been thinking that we should do Zoom too.
It's not so hard.
You've heard us mention a few times that the records or the papers that we use from the city building, the city clerk's vault or archives, there are boxes and boxes of old documents and books, some of them that were originally bound up in newspapers from 1875 that are still in that original bundle, that the city clerk and the mayor gave us access to this, and we're going through and breaking everything out, archiving it, and we're going to put it digitally so that people can look at it that way also. But we're finding so many things that dispel a lot of the rumors about Bellevue and interesting things about people in Bellevue and how Bellevue grew.
Absolutely. Well, we have a note from Linda, who is watching right now from Virginia, and she would love to be able to take part in your history seminars if you host them virtually. So there's a vote in favor.
Hey.
So, well, this is posted on the City of Bellevue's Facebook page, and it'll stay there as well as on Behringer-Crawford's page. So the good thing is everybody will be able to get in touch with you guys to learn more, and I hope to see you guys again. Absolutely.
Thank you.
This has been amazing, and there are so many. Several people have asked about Van Vost.
Yep.
So, Michelle in St. Louis votes for Zoom too. All right, Michelle. So how about you guys put Van Vost on your list of to-dos when you have your next group?
Sorry. What about Van Vost? What
Several different people ask. Let's see. Michelle was wondering, hope you can find out about the 400 block of Van Vost. And then someone else in the chat, let me see if I can find it. They just said, is Van Vost technically in Bellevue? Which I believe that it is. I'm pretty sure it's at the edge, right?
No, it's a full block inside.
Full block. Okay.
The edge is O'Fallon.
Okay, cool. So I'm not sure exactly what Michelle has in mind, but I think she just wants to learn more.
Okay, and this is the last urban legend we're going to debunk tonight. The Van Vost, Foote, Ward, Van Vost, and O'Fallon are not named for James Taylor's son-in-law. They are named for Keturah Harris's sons-in-law. They are James Taylor's granddaughter's husbands.
Interesting.
And that's why they bound, or that's why they're all within the Harris heirs addition to Bellevue.
In that third section, right, that you talked about. Very cool. All right, well, we are going to have to say goodnight. This has been fantastic. Jim, Bev, and Marcy, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And I hope those of you who are with us will come back next week. And we are going to be getting a virtual tour of the Covington Cathedral by historian Steve Insweiler. So I hope you will come back and join us. So I will see you guys next Wednesday. And until then, I hope you guys stay warm and have a great night. See you guys soon.
You too.
Bye.